So February, we have our caging results first. And
Yeah.
keep things consistent. We have total donations for the year. 2022 was down, although that had looked good. 2021 weren't in the middle there, so that's on there. Average gift up significantly. And so for a up year, and I put kind of here, and that's because we have a new and different perspective on caging results. As many of you know, as we talked about last time, we just brought the more RMG into the fold here. And so we have a second set of caging data that we can go through and talk about here. When you look at the caging results by organization, it shows a different story. And the big thing that I put in bold, but I put it at the bottom, so let me just highlight it here, is that I removed two outliers. Both of them were very large revenue organizations, one of which had a very large year-over-year change. And so it was, when you looked at the overall results looked kind of good, but when you looked organization by organization, it was a different story. And so you can see that the bulk of folks are clustered below in the year-over-year change. So we had 123 organizations with full 2021 and 2022 results. I should specify this is with some results still coming in. I got these data as they were finishing up reconciliations, so there's going to be some more revenue for some of these, but almost 100 of those organizations were down, and the median revenue result was down 10%. Looked good when you looked at the overall, but most organizations were down over 2021, but still up over 2020 when you looked at it. So that refrain that I always come back to, 2022 would look good if there wasn't this COVID bubble in the middle, pretty consistent there. And so hopefully we will see the kind of trend line continue up for 2023. And there are some indications that the overall economy may be moving in such a way that allows us to be able to do that. So any questions on the caging? I know it's a slightly different result, way of framing it than we've done before. Apologize for that. And I know that in the future, we will have some different ways of looking at it, still trimming out what those are as we work with our new friends over at More RMG. Questions? Okay. Then we just got a report from the Winterberry Group, and some of you know Bruce Beagle from the sector. They are not a More company, but strong insights into the ad sector, kind of friend of. So happy to be able to present his results. And they're an organization that does really smart work. Since I'm using their content, want to make sure I'm giving them a plug up front. They looked at overall annual advertising and marketing spend, and this is not obviously the nonprofit sector only, but you did see a jump up of 9% in advertising and marketing spend, right? A little bit more than what inflation was last year, but part of that is we're still recovering from how 2022 was so down from 2019. So this is where the spend is looking. Of those, about 22% up in online marketing, and they show a down 3% year over year in offline marketing spend. So that's since 2019. Still haven't fully recovered from the pandemic in the offline marketing spend, but to growth from 2022 to 21 to 22. So that offline marketing spend, you will see, yes, direct mail still going up across the board. The only two areas where it's going down are newspaper and magazines. You do see experiential sponsorship and addressable TV leading the charge there. And so it's kind of interesting, the groupings here, because addressable TV and targetable online spend are so overlapping right now it's difficult to say, well, is CTV this or is it that? Is it offline or is it online? And you will see that they have, in online marketing spend, they have a CTV bucket where there's $21 billion of marketing spend here. And so what you're seeing is that there is some addressable TV that they don't group in CTV, but that's something, as we'll talk about in trends, those things are overlapping more and more, and people are spending on linear, addressable TV, CTV, and programmatic display all at the same time, and with the same ad budgets, and sometimes getting efficiencies across there. Because if you are advertising with someone like an Apple, well, they have everything. They have Apple TV, they have display, they have the App Store, they have all of these things. So significant growth in CTV there. You also see digital video, again, overlap to some extent with CTV, display in there with strong growth, and then search, ever popular search. So influencer marketing's up 28%, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. That's what's known in the biz as a tease. So some trends that they identified. First and foremost, they said there's an increased emphasis on experience. I was happy to see this in there because I hear this from us all the time, that there's customization, there's personalization, there's omni-channel efforts, all of which make a surround sound donor experience, and one that is uniquely tied to that one-on-one marketing, that one-on-one relationship with each constituent and hopefully with each donor. They highlighted direct mail not dead. For the hundreds of consecutive years, direct mail still not dead, and some fun articles about why that is that they picked out. They highlighted increasing digital cost per thousand, and even over and above that, cost per click has often gone up as well, because you're paying more on a cost per thousand, and then it's been harder in some of these, especially in Meta, to get the clicks that we're looking for. And so this has been a tough time to be advertising in digital. I know folks are very worried, and justifiably so, about increasing direct mail costs, but this is an increasing ecosystem as well. And so we talked about last time all of these bespoke 7-Eleven and Home Depot setting up their own ad networks with their own data. As long as you're bringing your own audience to the party here, because we have data that they don't, you can take advantage of those networks that may not be as competed over. And when you're doing programmatic, when you're working with More Digital or someone like us that has a seat at the trade desk that is going across all of these networks, you can take advantage of lower costs, because there is some benefit to where a click comes from and that context around it. But often a click is a click is a click. You want to make sure it's not from the bad neighborhood in the internet. But other than that, if you can get that same person on the same page with a different ad network for lower cost, you're going to do that. There's a continued increase in spend on triggered mail. For us, this would not just be acknowledgements, but this would be welcome series. This would be we've modeled this person as a really strong planned giving prospect because they downloaded this online, and so we're going to send them these things. But that programmatic direct mail spend is going to be there, and that translates to us partly for donor journeys. There are other sorts of donor journeys that don't rely on that programmatic triggered mail spend, but that also falls under increased emphasis on experience. And then a few more that they didn't have fun graphics for: convergence of linear and CTV buys. We talked about continued investment in data infrastructure, trying to get to that one truth system. And they specifically called out having that CDP, having that constituent data platform that can do all of this for you, track your donations and help you with your modeling, and really trigger touch points across all of these channels that we're talking about. And then it's the beginning of 2023. everyone's been experimenting with ChatGPT, so they're legally required to talk about AI and machine learning solutions, which are still more robust in the modeling sector than they are in natural language processing, but still some exciting applications in that as well. Any questions on any of this before I go on to Fundraising Effectiveness Project? So Fundraising Effectiveness Project, they released their data through Q3 of last year. Overall, number of donors down, number of dollars up, retention down. Film at 11. This is kind of the story that we've been seeing from them and from our data across the board, although this dollars up is something that isn't always seen. And it may be suspect to those outliers, as you'll see from some of the data. It's tough to see overall dollars going up for most organizations, given some of the data that's behind it. Because donor numbers are down across the board, new donors, new retained donors. Thankfully, repeat retained donors isn't down all that much. And that's those new donors that were coming in at the beginning of COVID, 2020. They've been their new retained donors in 2021, and now there are repeat retained donors. So that meal is moving through the snake, as it were. And so that isn't falling off as much as others are. Retention rates are also down across the board. This is if the overall revenues now are the equivalent of these bad weather events that we've been having, retention rates going down are the equivalent of climate change. They are the environmental thing that is causing the thing that we have now that's scary. And so when you see retention rates down across the board, that is highly concerning, because we have more of those repeat donors and that haven't fallen off as much. But this is the same line down that we've seen on donor numbers for the past couple of decades. And this is what we're trying to address with that omni-channel one-on-one marketing. How do we take the people who are valuable to us and hold on to them? Because if we don't hold on to them, we don't have an acquisition program either, because the acquisition isn't going to pay for itself over the long term. So this is, if I had to frame the slide and use it as my dartboard and use it as my, I'm concerned about this thing first and foremost, this is it. Donations are down across every level of donor. I teased at the top, it's tough to see how you have revenues going up and this slide to be consistent. What I think may be happening is that these donors are giving more often throughout the year, and that may be what's triggering it. Or it could just be that you have some people moving up within these bands, your 5,000 donors becoming your 10,000 donors, and that's entering it into it here, but it's still a concerning part of the report. And to see every level of donor going across, that's of course a challenge to the long-term viability, because your 10,000 dollar donors don't start out at $10,000. They start out at $100. They start out at $50. Then want to get into cookies. But before I get onto cookies, these are going to be the electronic kind, not the chocolate chip kind. Any questions? So Google has been engaged in goalpost pushing for about 4 years on when they are going to get rid of third-party tracking cookies. And it's generally speaking about 18 months from now, since 2019. And so this is the prequel. You can probably see what's coming. That's right. They said, okay, by Q3 of next year, for real this time, we're actually going to get rid of third-party cookies. And so, I debated between this graphic and Lucy pulling away the football from Charlie Brown. It's challenging because Google really hasn't figured out what is going to replace cookies in its ecosystem, because it does need that information coming from cookies, but hasn't figured out a way to get data stored in web browsers, from advertising, from analytics, all of that they need in order to be effective. And so right now they're saying they need to press ahead with Topics API so that they can do interest-based marketing. But the World Wide Web Consortium has said, that is still inappropriate surveillance. It's still not what we want on the internet. In addition, they're working on on-device ad auctions. So instead of going out to something like the Trade Desk, where you have a brokered auction that's out in the cloud between buyers and sellers, they want to be able to do that on device, move it closer, make it faster, based on interests, trying to segment off a segment of the advertising that they would be able to control, likely specifically on Android devices, and then a few different APIs that they're working on. I know that the first party sets, the idea of treating different domains owned by the same company for browser security purposes, that's the idea of it's not a third-party cookie if it's still within the same ecosystem. That doesn't sound all that exciting to many of you, but as someone who runs like 25, 30 different websites for each of more companies, boy, that's going to be important for me as people go to THT Inc. or go to CDR or go to Edge Direct or First Degree or those sorts of things. So minor part of least important bullet point for most people, but one that I'm interested in. And then Bing launched this yesterday. And Google has been a quick follower. They've been involved in AI as well, but I'm guessing most of you don't go to Bing all that often, so you may not notice that this box under the usual search is a little bit different. And instead of search for anything, they're asking for you to ask me anything, up to 1,000 characters. They are incorporating what you've seen on ChatGPT, what you've seen from OpenAI, the idea that you can have this more natural language conversation with something. And this, in my mind, is going to change the search game. And so let's say you do search for, I need to throw a dinner party for 6 people who are vegetarian. Can you suggest a 3-course meal menu with a chocolate dessert? And when you put that in, you can have your normal search result over on the left. There's a Google result. There's Bon Appetit magazine. There's Bing News because I used one of their canned things. But then over on the right, sure, I can suggest that for you. Here's a starter, here are a couple of mains, here are a couple of desserts. And so Bing wants to be your AI-powered answer engine. Google wants to be your AI-powered answer engine. And so we're going to get into this often when you search on Google. If you search for Belgium on Google, what you're going to get at the top aren't search results. They're ads in a lot of cases, but there's also above that featured snippets. There's the things that Google thinks you want to actually know about Belgium. Here's the capital, here's the flag, here's a map, here's their main exports, here's who's the prime minister right now, all of these sorts of things. Here also are trips to Belgium, if you want to get all of that, all of the things about Belgium that you could want. And then only below that do you get to searching results. So about 20 to 25% of Google results right now are no-click results. They're people who search for something, they looked at that featured snippet, they got what they wanted out of it. The reason in my mind that AI can be a game changer for that is you think back to the early days of the internet, one of the search engines was Ask Jeeves. And it was, you asked Jeeves a question, they came up with an answer, and it was a natural language-ish way of searching for things, but it wasn't very good. But it was now, we can kind of say, ahead of its time. ChatGPT, OpenAI can process questions, and it may not always come up with the right answers, but it can have this conversation with you that says, yes, I can suggest you a 3-course meal. You don't have to go to a website to get this. And so increasingly, search engines are going to be answer engines, and there's not going to be as much click-through to individual pages because they've set the precedent with featured snippets. Now, if they can use your content to answer their question without linking to you, they're going to do that. Try to get people to spend more time on Google and Bing. So that's at least how I see it, which may or may not be how you see it. Any thoughts, questions? Then let's get into the potpourri section. The economy is pretty much back. You can see that we had the COVID challenges and kind of the trend line that we were looking at before with GDP, and we're basically right on that trend line. Isn't that great? So that's good news. Inflation has been coming down, and so a lot of the worries that we had about the overall economy, not that the economy is a hugely great predictor of charitable giving, but hopefully this will help people feel like they can make charitable gifts who may have been pulling back. These folks are kind of an interesting story. So this gang of people who are blurred out in this stole 20 cars in 1 month. And the reason that it's interesting is they stole it to pay, this is a little gang, and they stole it to pay for their leader's chemotherapy in Delhi, according to the cops. And so the car here is one of the ones stolen. The police said that in the last month, they stole and dismantled at least 20 vehicles and sold the parts as scrap to be able to fund their leader's chemotherapy. And so if there were ever a time to make a sequel, now's the time. You have the story, you have a reason to steal all of these cars, go for it. There's a semi-famous study about how our word choice matters, and the study that I like for this is they asked how fast they show people videos of cars coming together, let's say, and they say how fast were these cars going when they blinked, and it's like 40 crashed and 30 miles an hour when you say collided, and there are different word choices in it. And so the words that we use change the way that we looked at it. Well, someone went and did this for academic papers and said, when you use different words, what sort of causal strength do people assume when you say cause? You know, cause means cause. That's a strong causation. Versus the data are consistent with. Well, that's not a strong one. That's not even a moderate one. Most people say that's a no relationship whatsoever. And there are all of these words in between. And so as we think about things like ChatGPT and copywriting, and will there still be copywriting, and all of this Sturm und Drang about whether we're all going to be replaced by the machines, remember that there are near infinite shades of gray in the human mind and the human heart that hopefully with our training, we can be the best people to be able to do that, to choose the right word for the situation and not go to, an AI is going to be very good at getting you to the mushy middle. And so as we retain the facility to change our minds, as we retain the facility to learn and to grow, we can still stay a half step ahead. I mentioned we'd be coming back to influencer marketing, and yes, it's in the promotional and educational section of this. If you go to wearemore.com/webinars on February 21st, in just 2 short weeks, we will be hosting influencer marketing and deeper dive. This is our experts at First Degree, but we're so excited to be joined by Paralyzed Veterans of America, talking about the campaign that they did in influencer marketing. And we're going to be talking about how influencer marketing impacts different demographics, new donor demographics from what we're used to reaching. And so it's a really exciting opportunity to bring up and build the habit of philanthropy with new generations and with new demographics who we may not be talking to as effectively. So some great tips on how you can do it yourself. And yes, we'll also talk about how we've done it, but mostly about what do you have to think about as you're thinking about an influencer marketing campaign. So that was the deck. Questions, comments, things that you'd like to circle back to.